Honestly, if Ryan stopped doing everything for you, I'm not sure what you'd even do. The room exploded with laughter, and for a second I stood there with a champagne glass in my hand, looking at 35 people who had just watched my girlfriend turn the last 3 years of my life into the punchline of her birthday party. Jessica laughed louder than anyone. She leaned against my shoulder like I was still her favorite person in the room, even though she had just reduced me to a joke in front of her friends, coworkers, cousins, and people whose names I barely remembered. "Oh, come on," she said when she noticed my expression. "Don't be so sensitive." Someone near the kitchen raised his glass. "No, seriously, man? Are you her boyfriend or her personal assistant?" More laughter. Jessica pointed at him and grinned. "See? Even strangers can tell. I remember the music so playing behind us. I remember the smell of vanilla frosting and expensive perfume. I remember the little gold candles spelling out Jessica. And I remember thinking that I had spent nearly $200 on those decorations because she had told me the party needed to look effortlessly expensive. I remember the way the room suddenly felt too warm. Most of all, I remember the exact moment she said, "Ryan likes being needed too much." I swear, sometimes I think if I stopped having problems, he wouldn't know what to do with himself. Everybody laughed again. I looked at her. She smiled at me as if she expected me to laugh too. I didn't. She tilted her head. "Seriously? You're actually upset?" I slowly put my glass down on the nearest table. "No," I said. "I'm fine." "There you go," she said, laughing. "See, he's fine." And that was when something inside me ended. Not exploded, not shattered. Ended. There was no dramatic rush of anger, no desire to throw anything, no fantasy of humiliating her back. I didn't want revenge in that moment. I didn't even want to argue. I just suddenly understood that I had spent years confusing being useful with being loved. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I'm 29 years old, and until that night, I honestly believed I was building a life with the woman I loved. We had been together for 3 years and 8 months. We weren't married, but we had talked about it. We had discussed neighborhoods we might live in, whether we'd eventually want kids, what kind of house we'd buy, and even the absurd question of what dog we'd get. I had a folder on my phone with apartment listings in areas Jessica liked. I had a spreadsheet for savings. I knew what kind of coffee she preferred in the morning and which restaurants she hated because the lighting was too harsh. I knew that when she said she was fine, she usually wasn't. I knew she hated driving downtown, that she forgot to charge her phone, that she always underestimated how long it took her to get ready, and that when she was stressed, she would leave cabinets open without realizing it. I knew these things because I loved her. At least, that's what I told myself. And I never once thought of myself as her savior. I wasn't keeping score. I wasn't waiting for gratitude. When her car battery died at 6 in the morning before an important presentation, I drove 40 minutes to pick her up. When she got laid off from a job she hated anyway, I helped her rewrite her resume and sent it to a few people I knew. When she fell behind on rent during a rough month, I covered the difference because I had savings and she didn't. When her mother had a medical scare and Jessica was too overwhelmed to think straight, I handled the hotel booking, the driving, the food, and the phone calls. When she wanted to move into a better apartment but couldn't qualify a loan, I helped her organize the paperwork. When she started a new job and hated her manager, I listened to the same story about that manager probably 20 times. When she had a panic-filled Sunday night before an important Monday meeting, I stayed awake with her until almost 3 in the morning. I didn't do those things because I expected applause. I did them because that's what I thought partners did, and in the beginning, Jessica appreciated it. That's what makes the ending harder to explain. We met at a friend's barbecue when I was 25 and she was 24. I was there because my college friend Mark had moved into a new place and decided that owning a grill automatically made him qualified to host a party. Jessica arrived with 2 friends and a bottle of wine. I remember noticing her because she wasn't trying to be the loudest person there. She had this easy confidence that made people turn toward her when she spoke. We talked near the back porch for almost an hour about stupid things. Movies, bad bosses, travel, the ridiculous amount of money people spent on wedding venues. She told me she wanted to build a career in marketing and eventually work for a major company. I told her I worked in operations for a mid-sized logistics firm and wanted to move into management. She said I sounded ambitious. I laughed and told her I mostly sounded tired. She laughed at that. At the end of the night, she asked for my number. 2 days later, she texted me, and somehow that became dinner, then another dinner, then weekends together, then the first time she stayed over, then the first time I realized I was checking my phone hoping to see her name. Our relationship was good for a long time, really good. Jessica was affectionate. She was funny, she was ambitious, she pushed me to take better care of myself. She remembered little details about my work. When I got promoted, she brought home a bottle of champagne and made me dinner. When I turned 27, she surprised me with tickets to a baseball game because she knew I had been talking about going all summer. When my father needed help moving some furniture, she showed up with coffee and spent half the day carrying boxes. I didn't fall in love with some imaginary version of her. I fell in love with a real person. That's why I kept trying to explain away the changes when they started. The first signs were so small that I barely noticed them. Jessica became more focused on appearances. She started following a lot of lifestyle influencers and talking about what her friends were buying. Suddenly, the restaurant we went to wasn't good enough because everyone in our circle was going somewhere else. She began caring about where people lived, what cars they drove, what companies they worked for. She started making comments about couples we knew. "Look at Daniel and Chloe," she said one night. "They've already bought a house." I told her they had 2 incomes and family help. She shrugged. "Still, they're moving forward." I didn't realize at the time that she was measuring me too. Then came the career comments. I got another promotion, but it wasn't the huge leap she wanted. I was earning around $90,000 a year, which I considered good money, especially because I was saving aggressively and had no debt beyond my car. Jessica didn't see it that way. One evening at dinner, she asked how much I thought I could make in 5 years. I told her I didn't know. She said, "That's the problem." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "You don't think big enough," she said. "You're comfortable." I asked what she wanted me to do. She said she didn't know. She just wanted me to have more drive. That word stayed with me. Drive. I had worked since I was 18. I had put myself through school. I had built a career without family connections. I had been promoted twice. I had saved enough to put money toward a future home. But somehow I was comfortable. I told myself she was trying to motivate me. Maybe she was. Maybe she had simply stopped respecting me. I didn't know the difference yet. Around that time, Jessica's own career took off. She got hired by a larger company, and suddenly her social circle changed. Coworkers invited her to expensive dinners. She went to networking events. She started talking about executives by first name. She came home excited about people I had never met. At first, I was proud of her. I genuinely was. I wanted her to succeed. But gradually, I became the person she compared herself against. "Mark just bought a BMW," she'd say. "Sarah's boyfriend is starting his own company. Jason got promoted to director at 30. I began hearing those names so often that I knew more about the achievements of people I'd never met than I knew about my own. Then came the jokes. They were always disguised as humor. "Ryan's not really a networking guy. Ryan likes his little spreadsheets. Ryan is allergic to risk." I laughed with her. I didn't want to be insecure. I didn't want to become the boyfriend who couldn't take a joke. So when she told people I was the practical one, I smiled. When she said I was basically 80 years old in a 29-year-old body, I laughed. When her friend Megan asked why I never wanted to go to certain parties, Jessica answered for me. "He doesn't like feeling out of place." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. That's how it happens. You accept one little insult, because correcting it feels more uncomfortable than absorbing it. Then another. Then another. Eventually, the person insulting you doesn't even realize they're doing it anymore. They just expect you to stand there and take it. Meanwhile, my usefulness increased. Jessica's new job came with more responsibility, but she struggled with the workload. I helped. She had to prepare a presentation for an important client, so I stayed up with her while she practiced. She needed a contact at a local company for a campaign, and I introduced her to someone from my professional network. Her car started having problems, so I became her transportation. She said she'd pay me back for gas, but I always told her not to worry about it. Then one month, her rent increased and she was waiting for a bonus. I transferred money to her account. "I'll pay you next month," she promised. I said, "Whenever." She didn't pay me next month. I didn't ask. I wasn't keeping score. At least, that's what I believed. The strange thing was that the more I helped, the less special the help became. The first time I drove 40 minutes to pick her up, she hugged me and said I was amazing. 6 months later, if I wasn't available immediately, she would ask why I couldn't just come. When I covered an unexpected bill, she thanked me. Later, when I said I couldn't cover another one, she looked genuinely surprised. But you have savings. That sentence should have been a warning. Instead, I explained myself. I do, but I'm trying to save for the house. She rolled her eyes. It's not like I'm asking for thousands. I gave her the money. Another time, she needed a ride to an event where she expected to meet someone important. I had an important meeting the next morning and told her I couldn't stay late. She said, "It's okay, I'll figure it out." Then she became distant for the rest of the evening. Eventually, I drove her. I missed dinner with Mark that night. Mark had been asking me for weeks to hang out. I canceled again. "You always cancel for her," he told me. I said, "She's my girlfriend." He nodded. "I know. I'm just saying there's always going to be something." I didn't understand what he meant. I thought he was being unfair. Jessica needed me. That was my responsibility, or so I thought. The more successful she became, the more she seemed embarrassed by the parts of me that hadn't changed. My clothes, my car, my job title, my quiet personality. She started encouraging me to upgrade everything. "You need a better wardrobe. You should get a nicer watch. You should probably replace that car soon." I asked why. She said, "Because people notice." I said I didn't care what people thought. She responded, "That's because you don't understand how the world works." It hurt, but I didn't say so. I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to believe she was simply growing. Maybe we were growing in different directions. Maybe I was supposed to grow with her. So I tried. I bought a few nicer shirts. I went to networking events. I accepted invitations I didn't enjoy. I listened to conversations about investments and luxury apartments and career trajectories, but instead of bringing us closer, it seemed to make her more critical. "You're still holding back," she told me one night. "From what?" I asked. "Everything." I remember staring at her across the kitchen. "Jessica, what exactly do you want from me?" She sighed. "I don't know. I just want you to become the man I know you could be." That sentence should have made me leave. Instead, it made me try harder. That's the part I hate admitting. I tried harder. I worked longer hours. I volunteered for a management project. I started researching certifications. I even looked at opportunities in other companies. But every improvement somehow became invisible because the goal moved. If I earned more, I needed a better title. If I got a better title, I needed a bigger company. If I bought something nice, I should have bought something nicer. If I made plans, I needed to make bigger plans. And through all of it, Jessica continued relying on me for the very stability she criticized. She hated my boring personality but called me whenever she needed calm. She thought my job wasn't impressive enough but wanted my professional contacts. She called me unambitious but depended on my savings. She mocked my routine but relied on me to organize her chaos. I should have noticed the contradiction sooner. I didn't. The birthday party was supposed to be special. Jessica had been planning it for weeks. She wanted a rooftop venue with string lights, a catered dinner, an open bar, a professional photographer, and a cake from a bakery she had seen on Instagram. The venue was mostly paid for by her, but she asked me to cover several additional expenses because cash flow was tight this month. I covered them. I also picked up her dress from the tailor because she didn't have time. I coordinated with the photographer. I called the caterer when they had a delivery issue. I picked up flowers. I brought the cake. I checked the seating arrangement. I even made sure her cousin had a ride because Jessica didn't want anyone arriving late. By the time the party started, I had been awake since 6 in the morning. But I was happy. I remember looking at Jessica when she walked onto the rooftop and thinking she looked incredible. She saw me and smiled. "You made it all happen," she said. "Thank you." She kissed my cheek. For a moment, everything felt normal again. I thought maybe we were okay. Maybe the distance I'd felt was just stress. Maybe I had been overthinking. Then the guests arrived. The drinks started flowing. Music got louder. Jessica became the center of attention, which she loved. I stayed mostly on the edges, helping when needed. I talked with Mark for a while. I met a few of Jessica's coworkers. One of them, a guy named Ethan, was charismatic and loud and seemed to know everybody. Jessica introduced us. "This is Ryan." Ethan shook my hand. "The famous Ryan." I laughed. "Famous?" He grinned. "Jessica says you're the guy who fixes everything." I looked at Jessica. She laughed. I may have mentioned it. I didn't think much of it. Later, after dinner, someone started asking Jessica how she had managed to organize such a great party. She pointed at me. "Ask him." Everyone turned. I smiled. "She did most of it." Jessica shook her head. "No, Ryan did." Someone said, "That's actually adorable." Jessica laughed. "Adorable? It's more like having an unpaid event coordinator." I laughed weakly. Another person asked, "Does he charge by the hour?" That's when the joke started. I could have walked away. I should have. Instead, I stood there. Maybe I was waiting for Jessica to realize it had gone too far. She didn't. She kept going. "Honestly, I don't know what I'd do without him," she said. "He pays for everything, drives everywhere, calls people, fixes problems. It's like having a husband without the paperwork." Someone shouted, "Then why haven't you married him?" Jessica laughed. "Because I'm not insane." The laughter was immediate. My stomach dropped. She looked at me and smiled. "Relax, I'm kidding." I said nothing. Then someone asked whether I ever said no to her. Jessica answered before I could. "Not really." She laughed. "He's terrible at saying no." A woman near the bar said, "That's dangerous." Jessica shrugged. "He's too sensitive to realize when people take advantage of him." That sentence changed something. I looked at her. She didn't look ashamed. She looked entertained. Then came the final joke about me liking being needed. I remember the exact feeling after she said it. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. Every ride, every payment, every late night phone call, every introduction, every canceled plan, every time I'd moved my schedule around her, every time I'd told myself I was simply being a good boyfriend. Suddenly, they all looked different. Not because they had been wrong, because she had been telling everyone that the very things I had done out of love were evidence that I was weak. She hadn't just failed to appreciate them. She had built a social identity around the idea that I was beneath her. I excused myself shortly afterward. Jessica followed me toward the hallway. "Ryan, what's wrong?" "Nothing." "You're acting weird." "I'm tired." "Don't ruin my birthday." I stopped and looked at her. "I'm not trying to." Then smile. I almost laughed. "You really don't understand, do you?" She crossed her arms. "Understand what?" I looked at her for several seconds. Nothing. I went home alone that night. She stayed at the party. I drove back to our apartment, sat in the dark, and didn't turn on the lights. I expected anger to come. It didn't. Instead, I started remembering things, not just the big things, the little ones. The morning she forgot her work badge and called me while I was already on the highway. The time she missed a payment and asked me to cover it. The weekend she wanted to visit her friend 3 hours away and expected me to drive. The time I connected her with someone who eventually helped her land a major account. The countless nights I'd listened to her complain about work. The dozens of small errands I'd done without thinking. I opened our shared calendar. Nearly every weekend for the previous 6 months had something related to Jessica's life on it. Her events, her work dinners, her family obligations, her appointments, her social plans. My own plans were scattered around hers like leftovers. I sat there for a long time. Then I opened my banking app. I looked at how much money I'd spent on things that weren't technically my responsibility. I wasn't broke. I wasn't even close, but the number was large enough to make me uncomfortable. Then I looked at my savings goals. I had been delaying a professional certification because Jessica had said the course was expensive. I'd postponed a trip with Mark because Jessica had wanted to attend a conference. I'd declined a job opportunity in another city because she didn't want to move. I'd delayed buying a better car because she needed help with her expenses. And suddenly I realized something that made me feel almost embarrassed. I had been making sacrifices for a future with someone who apparently considered those sacrifices evidence that I was pathetic. I didn't sleep that night. Around 4 a.m, Jessica came home. I heard the door open. She walked into the bedroom and asked if I was awake. I said yes. She changed clothes without turning on the light. Then she got into bed. "Are you still upset about the party?" She asked. "No." "Good." She pulled the blanket over herself. Because you really overreacted. I stared at the ceiling. Okay, I was joking. I know. Then why are you acting like this? I didn't answer. After a few seconds, she said, Ryan, yeah? You're not going to be weird tomorrow, right? I looked into the darkness. No. She turned over. Within minutes, she was asleep. I lay there beside her and realized I didn't recognize the person sleeping next to me anymore. Maybe the harder truth was that I didn't recognize myself either. The next morning, Jessica acted normal. She asked if there was coffee. I made some out of habit, then stopped halfway through pouring it into her mug. I looked at the cup in my hand. I thought about how many mornings I'd done that without even thinking. I poured my own coffee instead. She walked into the kitchen. Where's mine? You can make it. She stared at me. What? Nothing. The coffee machine is right there, she frowned. Okay. She made her own coffee. It was such a tiny thing that neither of us mentioned it again. But for me, it was the first boundary. I spent the rest of that day thinking, not about how to hurt her, not about how to make her jealous, not about how to get revenge. I thought about what would happen if I simply stopped doing things that were never mine to do. What if I stopped paying bills that belonged to her? What if I stopped driving her everywhere? What if I stopped calling people on her behalf? What if I stopped solving emergencies? What if I stopped making my life revolve around her schedule? The answer frightened me, not because I thought she'd collapse, because I realized I didn't know what our relationship looked like without me constantly supporting it. That was the real problem. I had become infrastructure, invisible infrastructure. Nobody thanked a bridge for holding traffic. Nobody praised a foundation for keeping a building upright. And somehow I had allowed myself to become both. That evening, Jessica came home and asked if I could take her car to the shop the next morning because she had an early meeting. Normally I would have said yes. Instead I said, you'll need to take it yourself. She looked at me. What? I have work? You can drop it off before work. No. Ryan, it's on your way. It's not. She stared at me as though I'd spoken another language. Are you still mad? I'm not mad. Then why are you acting like this? I put my laptop aside because I'm tired. Of what? I thought about the party, being responsible for everything. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Oh my God, we're still doing this? I'm not doing anything. You're punishing me. No. Yes, you are. I shook my head. I'm just not doing it anymore. She stared at me. Doing what? I looked directly at her. Everything. She didn't respond. I went to bed. The next morning, I made a decision that would eventually change both our lives. I wasn't going to punish Jessica. I wasn't going to sabotage her. I wasn't going to expose her to her friends or tell everyone what she'd done. I wasn't going to take money back. I wasn't going to ruin her career. I wasn't even going to make her feel guilty. I was simply going to stop rescuing her. If she needed transportation, she would arrange transportation. If she needed money, she would manage her money. If she needed professional help, she would ask someone else. If she created a problem, she would solve it. If she made a bad decision, she would experience the consequences. I would still be respectful. I would still care about her as a human being, but I would no longer confuse love with unlimited availability. That night I opened the Notes app on my phone and wrote 3 words, no more rescuing. I stared at them for a long time. Then I added another sentence. If she calls, listen. If she asks, consider. But don't automatically fix. I put the phone down. For the first time in years, I had no idea what tomorrow would look like. Strangely, I felt lighter. Jessica had laughed in front of everyone because she thought my greatest weakness was that I needed to be needed. She was wrong. My greatest weakness had been believing that being needed meant I was loved. I was finally ready to find out what happened when I stopped being her safety net. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, stared at the ceiling for a few seconds, and remembered the 3 words I'd written in my phone the night before. No more rescuing. I didn't know then how difficult it would be to live by them. Making a decision at 2 in the morning was easy. Following through when the person you love looks at you like you've suddenly become a stranger was something else entirely. Jessica was still asleep beside me, curled toward the wall. I got dressed quietly, made coffee for myself, and left for work without waking her. On the drive downtown, I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I felt strangely calm. I wasn't trying to punish her. That distinction became the one thing I kept repeating to myself whenever doubt crept in. I wasn't taking something away from Jessica. I was returning responsibility for her life to the person it had always belonged to. When I reached the office, I had 12 unread messages from her. The first said, "Can you call me?" The second came 5 minutes later. "Are you seriously ignoring me?" Then, "I need a favor." I stared at the screen. Normally, I would have responded immediately. Instead, I put my phone face down and started working. 20 minutes later, she called. I answered. "Hey, where are you?" "At work." "I know you're at work. Why didn't you answer?" "I was busy." There was a pause. "My car needs to go to the shop." "Okay, I need you to take it." "You can take it." Another pause. "Ryan, what?" "I have a meeting at 9. Then you should arrange a ride." Her voice changed. "Are you being serious?" "Yes." "It's literally on your route." "Not anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not available." She sighed loudly. "You're still upset about Saturday." "I'm not upset." "You are." "I'm not upset." "You are." "I'm not." "Then why are you acting like this?" I looked at my monitor. "Because I need to focus on work. You always helped me before." "I know. So now you won't?" "Not with this." She went quiet. Then she said, "Fine, I'll figure it out." "Okay, that's it? What do you want me to say?" "I don't know." "Something. Good luck with the car." I ended the call. My hands were shaking slightly. Not because I was afraid of her, because saying no to Jessica felt unnatural after years of saying yes. At 8:47, she texted me that she'd taken an Uber. I didn't respond. At 9:13, she sent another message. "This is ridiculous." I still didn't respond. At 10:02, "You know you're making things harder for me, right?" I finally typed back, "I'm sorry it's inconvenient. You'll have to make your own arrangements." She didn't answer for several hours. That was the first day. Nothing dramatic happened. No screaming, no breakup, no catastrophic consequence. Jessica got to work. I finished a project I'd been putting off. I went home at 6 instead of 7 because I wasn't waiting around to pick her up. She wasn't home when I arrived. For the first time in years, I had no idea where she was. And strangely, I didn't feel compelled to find out. She came home around 8. "Did you eat?" she asked. "Yeah." "You didn't wait?" "No." She put her bag down. "I thought we were going to eat together." "You didn't tell me that. You usually wait." "I'm not doing that anymore." She stared at me. "Can you stop saying that?" "Saying what?" "I'm not doing that anymore." "Why?" "Because it sounds like you're keeping score." I looked at her. "I'm not keeping score." "Then what are you doing?" "I'm setting boundaries." She laughed bitterly. "Boundaries? That's convenient." "Why?" "Because apparently now I'm some terrible person who takes advantage of you." "I didn't say that." "You don't have to." She walked into the bedroom and shut the door. I sat on the couch and listened to the silence. A part of me wanted to follow her. Another part reminded me that I'd spent years following every emotional storm she created. So I stayed where I was. That night, we barely spoke. The next morning, things looked normal again. At least, Jessica seemed determined to make them look normal. She asked if I could transfer her some money because her credit card payment was due. I said no. She stared at me. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I can't cover your credit card. You have the money. That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" "It's your bill." "Ryan, I'm getting paid Friday." "Then pay it Friday." "I'll get charged a fee." "Then you'll have to deal with the fee." She looked genuinely shocked. "You're really doing this?" "Doing what?" "Acting like you don't care about me?" I took a breath. "I care about you. I just don't think caring about you means I have to pay your bills." She shook her head. "I don't recognize you." "Maybe that's because you got used to a version of me who never said no." She didn't answer. She grabbed her purse and left. I sat there for several minutes. I wanted to chase her. I didn't. At lunch that day, Mark called. "You alive?" he asked. "Yeah." "How was the birthday aftermath?" "Complicated." "Did she apologize?" "Not really." He was quiet for a second. "You okay?" "I think so." "Want to get dinner?" I almost said no because Jessica and I usually had plans on Thursday. Then I remembered she hadn't actually made plans with me. I said yes. We met at a small restaurant near my office. I told him some of what had happened. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't make Jessica sound evil. I told him about the jokes, the money, the transportation, the constant comparisons. Mark listened. When I finished, he said, I knew. Knew what? That you were doing too much. I frowned. Why didn't you tell me? I did, you tell me? I did. You said I canceled plans. Exactly. That's not the same thing. It was to me. He leaned back. Ryan, I love you, man, but every time Jessica called, you disappeared. If we were playing basketball, you'd leave in the middle of the game because she forgot something. If we planned a trip, you'd cancel because she had an event. You didn't see it because you thought being there for her made you a good boyfriend. I looked down at my plate. Maybe it did. Sometimes. But being someone's boyfriend doesn't mean being their emergency department. That sentence stuck with me. Emergency department. That's what I'd become. Not a partner, not an equal, a service. I went home that night and started making a list. Not of everything I'd done for Jessica, but everything I'd stopped doing. It was surprisingly long. I had been paying for her streaming subscriptions because we'd bundled them together. I canceled the ones that were solely hers and transferred the account information. I had been paying her car insurance for several months because she'd said she was short. I told her she'd need to take it over the following month. I'd been handling a shared grocery budget that mostly benefited her because I did most of the shopping. I separated our personal expenses. I had been scheduling appointments for her when she asked me to. I stopped. I had been responding to work emails she forwarded to me, asking for advice. I told her I wasn't going to manage her work anymore. None of these things were dramatic. That's what made them powerful. I wasn't pulling a plug on her life. I was simply stepping away from systems I had quietly built around her. Jessica noticed every change. At first, she responded with irritation, then confusion, then anger. Why are you making everything so difficult? She asked one night. I'm not. You are. Everything used to be easy. I looked at her. For you. She went silent. I regretted saying it immediately, but I didn't take it back. That's unfair, she said. Maybe. So you're admitting you're trying to punish me? No. I'm admitting that things were easier for you because I was doing more. I never asked you to do all that. I almost laughed. You didn't have to. Then why did you? Because I loved you. She looked away. That doesn't mean you get to hold it over me. I'm not. It feels like you are. Then maybe you need to separate gratitude from obligation. She frowned. What does that mean? It means I can recognize that you never forced me to help you. I chose to, but now I'm choosing differently. She didn't like that answer. Neither did I. But it was honest. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere in our apartment changed. Jessica began making more arrangements on her own. She found rides. She paid her bills. She started calling coworkers instead of asking me to solve professional problems. At first, I thought maybe this was exactly what she needed. Maybe we would become healthier. Maybe our relationship could survive. I didn't want it to fail. That's something people misunderstand about boundaries. Setting one doesn't automatically mean you want the relationship to end. Sometimes you set a boundary because you want to see whether there is a relationship underneath the dependency. I wanted to find out, but Jessica wasn't interested in discovering that. She wanted the old arrangement back. One Saturday morning, she walked into the kitchen holding her phone. Can you call your friend at Hartwell? She asked. Why? I need an introduction. For what? The account I told you about? You can email him. He knows you. You know him too. Not really. You've met him once. Then introduce yourself. She frowned. Why are you being difficult? I'm not. You could send one text. I could. So why won't you? Because I don't want to use my relationship with him to solve your professional problem. She stared at me. You used to. I know. And now suddenly you're too good for it. That's not what I said. She walked away. Later that afternoon, I saw her typing an email. She figured it out herself. A month earlier, that would have made me proud. Instead, I wondered why she had needed me at all. That question bothered me. I began looking at my own life with the same honesty. Without Jessica's emergencies constantly interrupting my schedule, I suddenly had time, a lot of time. I used some of it to reconnect with people I'd neglected. Mark introduced me to his hiking group. I went reluctantly the first time, expecting to hate it. I ended up staying until sunset. I started exercising consistently again. I enrolled in the professional certification I postponed. I began applying for management positions at companies I'd previously ignored because they required longer hours or occasional travel. I realized I'd been shrinking my ambitions to fit around Jessica's needs while she accused me of lacking ambition. That irony was almost funny. My manager noticed the difference before I did. "You seem more focused lately," he said during a one-on-one. "Less distracted." I told him I'd been working on some personal boundaries. He smiled. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." A month later, I was assigned to lead a project that had the potential to move me into a regional operations role. The salary increase would be substantial. The position would require travel twice a month. 6 months earlier, I would have rejected it because Jessica hated the idea of me traveling. This time I said yes. When I told her, she didn't congratulate me. "You gonna be gone that much?" she asked. "A few days a month." "That's a lot. It's a good opportunity." "For your career." "Yes." She looked at me. "What about us?" I wanted to say, "What about us?" Instead I said, "I'm still here." She shook her head. "You're not the same." "I know. You used to care more." "I still care. It doesn't feel like it." I didn't know how to explain that caring and accommodating weren't the same thing. Maybe I had been guilty of making them the same too. My career began improving quickly. The certification I had delayed helped me qualify for new positions. My manager started involving me in higher-level meetings. I became more comfortable speaking up. I stopped worrying about whether people thought I was boring. I stopped trying to perform ambition for Jessica. I simply became ambitious for myself. There was a difference. Around the same time, Jessica's world became slightly more difficult. Not disastrous, just less convenient. Her department reorganized and her manager started demanding more. She needed to coordinate a major presentation and asked if I could help her practice. I said I could give her an hour on Sunday. "That's all?" she asked. "Yes. You used to stay up all night with me. I can't anymore." "Why?" "Because I have my own work." She stared at me. "You never cared about my career this little before." "That's not true." "It feels true." I didn't argue. She practiced alone. The presentation went well. When she came home, she told me she'd done great. I congratulated her. She smiled briefly. "I handled it myself." "You did?" There was pride in her voice, but something else too. She was beginning to understand what I had been trying to tell her. She didn't need me for everything. She had simply become accustomed to having me. That distinction became more obvious after her car broke down again. This time, it was a major repair. She called me from a parking lot. "Ryan, I don't know what to do. Call roadside assistance. I don't have the number. It's in your insurance app. Can you just come?" "I can't." "Why?" I'm at work. You can leave." "No, I can't." "Why? I'm at work. You can leave." "No, I can't." "Ryan." "Jessica, you can handle this." She went silent. Then she said, "I hate that sentence." "Why?" "Because you say it like you don't care." "I say it because I know you can." She hung up. 2 hours later, she texted that she had arranged a tow and was getting a rental. I replied, "Good." She sent a single message, "Thanks." That was the first time she thanked me for not helping. I didn't understand it then, but it was a turning point. Meanwhile, my relationship with Mark improved. I reconnected with 2 former coworkers. I started having dinner with people without checking whether Jessica had something planned. I joined a weekend hiking group. I bought a new suit for work without asking Jessica whether it looked impressive enough. I even started looking at apartments on my own because our lease was ending. The idea terrified me. Not because I didn't want to live with her, because I realized I'd never asked myself whether I wanted to continue living the life we had built. I'd only asked whether I could make it work. One evening, Jessica came home and found me reviewing an offer letter. "What's that?" she asked. "A promotion." "What?" She took the paper. "Regional Operations Manager?" "Yeah." "This is huge." "It is. When did you find out?" "Today." She looked at the salary. Her eyebrows lifted. "Ryan." "What?" "This is more than I thought." "More than you thought what?" "You could make." I laughed quietly. "That's probably the strangest compliment I've ever received." "That's not what I meant." "I know." She sat down. "I'm proud of you." I believe she meant it, and for a moment, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Happiness at hearing her say it. She hugged me. I hugged her back. That night, we talked for nearly 2 hours. She admitted she'd been unfair about my career. She said she had become obsessed with what other people thought. She said she hadn't realized how much I was doing because I made everything look easy. I listened. I didn't tell her the relationship was over. I didn't want it to be. I told her I needed her to understand that things couldn't go back to how they were. She nodded. I understand. But understanding something intellectually is not the same as accepting it emotionally. The next month proved that. Jessica started trying to re-establish the old dynamic in subtle ways. Can you just handle this one thing? Can you pick me up tonight? Can you pay this and I'll send it back? Can you call your friend? Each request was small. Each came with a reason. Each sounded harmless. And every time I asked myself the same question, if I say yes, am I helping my partner or am I stepping back into the role I just escaped? Sometimes I said yes, I wasn't trying to become heartless. If she genuinely needed support, I gave it. But I stopped doing things simply because she was uncomfortable doing them herself. That distinction caused arguments. You don't support me anymore, she said. I support you differently. What does that even mean? It means I won't solve problems you can solve. So now I'm on my own? You're not on your own. I'm beside you. It feels like you're behind me. Maybe that's because you used to expect me to be in front. She hated that answer. I hated that I had to give it. Then something happened that changed the situation more than anything else. Jessica had been trying to secure promotion at work. She had a major client presentation coming up, and she was competing with another manager for the position. Months earlier, I had introduced her to a senior executive at a partner company. That executive liked her work and had become an important professional contact. Jessica had used that relationship extensively. Now, during the final stage of the promotion process, the company asked for references from external partners. Jessica assumed the executive would provide one. He did, but his feedback was more complicated than she expected. He praised her ambition and communication skills, but mentioned that she sometimes struggled with follow-through and depended too heavily on others for operational details. Her manager asked her about it. Jessica called me that night. Did you talk to Daniel? She asked. No. Are you sure? Yes. He mentioned that I rely too much on other people? Okay. That came from you. What? You must have told him something. I didn't. Then how would he know? Because he works with you. She was quiet. You used to tell people how organized I was. You are organized in some ways. So you changed your story. No. You don't defend me anymore. I don't lie for you anymore. Silence. That's what you think I did? No. But I'm not going to make someone believe something that isn't true. She hung up. 2 days later, Jessica didn't get the promotion. Her competitor did. She came home furious. You know what happened? She asked. I heard. You didn't even ask how I was. I figured you wanted space. I wanted my boyfriend. I'm here. No, you're not. She threw her bag onto the chair. You used to fight for me. I looked at her. Did I? Yes. Or did I fight every battle so you wouldn't have to? She froze. I didn't raise my voice. That's not the same thing. She looked away. I lost because someone thinks I'm dependent. Maybe that's something worth looking at. Whose side are you on? Mine. She looked at me like I had slapped her, but I meant it. For years, I'd assumed that being in a relationship meant choosing the other person over yourself. I was learning that healthy love required choosing both. Jessica went into the bedroom and shut the door. I didn't follow. Later that night, I heard her crying. Every instinct told me to go in. I almost did. Then I remembered that crying wasn't an emergency. She was hurt. She was disappointed. She was allowed to feel those things. I could comfort her without taking responsibility for making the feeling disappear. So I knocked once. Do you want me to sit with you? There was a long pause. No. Okay. I walked away. That was perhaps the hardest moment of the entire process. Not because she was crying, but because I finally understood that love sometimes meant respecting someone's right to experience consequences without rushing in to remove them. Over the following weeks, Jessica became increasingly distant. She spent more time with coworkers. She started going to events without me. She told people we were having some issues. I didn't object. I didn't tell anyone her side of the story was incomplete. I didn't expose the birthday party. I didn't show anyone my banking records or the list of things I'd done for her. I kept the humiliation private because I didn't need an audience to validate what had happened. My own life kept moving forward. The promotion became official. My salary increased. I began traveling for work. I bought a used car I'd wanted for years. I rebuilt my savings. I started planning a trip with Mark and a few friends. I became more confident in meetings. I stopped apologizing for being quiet. People at work started coming to me for advice. The irony was almost painful. Jessica had spent years saying I wasn't ambitious enough. Once I stopped trying to prove ambition to her, I became more ambitious than I'd ever been. One Friday evening, I came home from work and found Jessica sitting at the kitchen table with several documents in front of her. "We need to talk," she said. "Okay." She pushed one paper toward me. "Our lease is up in 2 months." "I know." "Are we renewing?" I looked at her. "I don't know." "You don't know?" "You don't know." "Why?" "Because I don't know if this relationship is going to continue." Her face changed. "What?" "I've been thinking about it." "For how long?" "A while. You should have told me." "I wasn't sure." She stared at me. "So what have all these weeks been?" "Me trying to figure out whether we could rebuild something healthier." "And?" "I don't know yet." She looked angry. "You changed after my birthday." "Yes." "You became cold." "No. I became less available." "That's the same thing." "It isn't." "To me it is." I sat down. "Jessica, I didn't wake up one morning and decide to punish you. I heard you describe me in front of everyone. I heard you make my love sound pathetic. And I realized I had built my entire life around making yours easier. I apologized. You said you were joking. I was embarrassed. You were embarrassed because I reacted." She looked down. "Maybe. That's the problem." She was quiet. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I want you to know whether you actually want me or whether you want what I do for you." Her eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair." "Maybe it isn't. I love you." "Then love me without needing me to prove it by solving everything." She didn't answer. A week later, I learned something that made the situation even more complicated. Jessica had been talking to one of her coworkers about our relationship. His name was Ethan, the same Ethan who had joked about me being her assistant at the birthday party. I didn't know the details until one evening Jessica came home upset. "Ethan said something to me today." "What?" "He said I shouldn't be surprised you're doing better now." I looked at her. "What does that mean?" "He said you always seemed capable." "Okay." "He said the way I talked about you at the party made him uncomfortable." I was silent. "He said you looked like you wanted to disappear." I remembered that night. I did. Jessica swallowed. "He said something else." "What?" "He said I had no idea how much you were actually doing for me." I didn't know what to say. She looked at me. "How much did you tell him?" "Nothing." "Then how does he know?" "Apparently he saw enough." That was the revelation that changed everything. Until then, Jessica could tell herself that I had exaggerated what happened. She could tell herself I was angry and overreacting. She could tell herself the things I had done weren't significant. But now, someone from her own social circle was telling her that he'd noticed. And once that happened, other people started noticing too. Her cousin asked why I wasn't driving her to events anymore. A coworker asked why I wasn't helping with some of her professional contacts. Her friend Megan joked that Jessica had lost her assistant. Jessica didn't laugh. She told me about it later. "Everyone thinks I'm dependent on you." I said, "I don't know what everyone thinks." "They do." "Then maybe stop worrying about what everyone thinks." She looked at me. "That's what you used to say." I should have said it to myself too. That night, she sat across from me for a long time. "Were you really doing all those things?" she asked. "What things?" "Everything." I thought about the list. A lot of things. "How much money?" "I don't know." "Do you have a number?" I stopped tracking it. "Why?" "Because I didn't want to resent you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Ryan, I'm not telling you this so you feel guilty." "Then why?" "Because you asked." She nodded slowly. "I didn't realize." "I know. I thought you liked doing it." "I did." "Then why did you stop?" I looked at her. "Because you made me understand that you didn't see it as love. You saw it as weakness." She covered her face with both hands. I sat there quietly. For the first time since the birthday party, she wasn't arguing. She wasn't accusing me of being cold. She wasn't asking me to change back. She was simply sitting with the consequences of what she'd said. And I realized something else. The balance of power in our relationship had changed without me ever trying to change it. I had stopped chasing her approval. I had stopped being afraid she'd be disappointed. I had stopped believing that losing her would mean losing myself. That made me dangerous to the old version of our relationship because I no longer needed it to survive. 2 weeks later, Jessica received an offer from another company. It was a significant opportunity, but the job required relocation to another city. She told me about it over dinner. I haven't accepted it. Why? Because of us. I looked at her. That's your decision. She looked frustrated. You always say that now, because it is. Don't you want me to stay? Yes. Then say that. I want you to stay. Why don't you to stay? Why don't you fight for me? I looked at her carefully. Because I don't want you to stay because I convinced you to. She stared at me. What happened to you? I grew up. She looked down. Maybe I did too. I hoped that was true, but I also knew that words were easy. What mattered was what she did next. She accepted the offer. She didn't move immediately. The company gave her 3 months. That meant we had 3 months to decide what we were. For the first time, our relationship wasn't being held together by convenience. She had transportation. She had her own money. She had her own career path. I had mine. Neither of us needed the other to solve ordinary life. If we stayed together, it would have to be because we genuinely wanted each other. That was the hardest test we'd ever faced. One evening, about 2 weeks before she was supposed to move, I came home and found her sitting on the floor beside a box of old photographs. She looked up at me. Remember this? She held up a picture from our first year together. We were standing on a beach, sunburned and laughing. I smiled. You hated that trip. I hated the hotel. You loved the beach. I loved you. The sentence hung between us. I sat down beside her. I loved you too. Do you still? I didn't answer immediately. Yes. She looked relieved for half a second. Then she asked, is that enough? I looked at the photograph. Love isn't the only thing that makes a relationship work. She nodded. I know. Do you? I think I do now. We sat quietly. Then she said, I thought being successful meant never needing anyone, and I thought loving someone meant always being needed. She laughed softly through tears. We were both wrong. I looked at her. Maybe. She put the photograph back in the box. There's something I need to tell you. What? She hesitated. I didn't realize how much I had built my life around you until you stopped doing things. I stayed quiet. At first, I was angry, she continued, then embarrassed, then scared, because I kept reaching for things that weren't there anymore. She wiped her eyes, and eventually I realized something. What? You weren't punishing me. I looked at her. No. You were letting me stand on my own. I nodded. Yes, and somehow that hurt more. Why? She looked at me. Because if you were punishing me, I could wait for you to forgive me, but you weren't. You were becoming someone who didn't need me to approve of him. I didn't know what to say. She leaned back against the wall. That's when I realized I might actually lose you. I looked at her. You might. She nodded. I know. For the first time, there was no manipulation in her voice. No accusation. No attempt to make me feel guilty. Just fear. Real fear. And despite everything, I felt it too. Because independence didn't erase love. It simply removed the illusion that love alone could hold us together. 3 days later, Jessica asked me to meet her at the restaurant where we'd had our first dinner. I almost said no. Instead, I agreed. I didn't know that she had spent the entire afternoon preparing for a conversation that would finally force both of us to confront what had happened. When I arrived, she was already there. She stood when she saw me. Hi. Hi. We sat across from each other. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her bag and placed something on the table. It was a small notebook. I recognized it immediately. What's that? I asked. She looked at me. Everything I remember. I frowned. Everything you did for me. I stared at the notebook. Jessica, you don't have to. I do. She opened it. There were pages of handwritten notes. Dates. Events. Bills. Rides. Work introductions, Emergency calls, trips, appointments. She had started reconstructing the list. I asked my sister about some of them, she said. I asked my coworkers about others. I remembered more than I thought. I didn't touch the notebook. Why? Because I finally understand that the problem wasn't that you stopped helping me. She looked directly at me. The problem was that I never noticed you were helping me at all. My chest tightened. Jessica. And I made fun of you for it. She swallowed. In front of everyone. I looked down. You did. I know. Why? She took a long breath. Because I was trying to convince myself I was above needing anyone. She looked embarrassed. And you made it too obvious that I did need someone. I didn't interrupt, so I turned you into the joke, she said. Because if everyone laughed at you, nobody would notice how much I depended on you. That was the first time she had said it plainly. No excuses. No, I was drunk. No, I was joking. Just the truth. I looked at the notebook again. What happens now? She asked. I thought about the first night, the rooftop, the laughter, the cake, the 3 words in my phone. No more rescuing. I realized then that the real test wasn't whether Jessica understood. It was whether I could forgive her without becoming the person I had been. I don't know, I said. That's honest. It's the only answer I have. She nodded. Then I'll accept it. We finished dinner quietly. Neither of us knew that this conversation would lead to the most difficult decision of our relationship. But as I walked home that night, I understood something I hadn't understood at the birthday party. Revenge wasn't making Jessica suffer. Revenge wasn't watching her struggle. Revenge wasn't proving that she needed me. The real victory was that I had finally become a person whose worth didn't depend on how much he could do for somebody else. And if Jessica wanted to be part of that life, she would have to meet me there as an equal. She couldn't go back to the old version of me. I couldn't either. 3 days later, she came home with a suitcase and placed it beside the door. I need to talk to you, she said. I looked at her face and knew immediately that whatever happened next would decide whether we stayed together or finally walked away from each other. Okay, I said. She took a breath. I think I owe you the whole truth. And for the first time since that birthday party, I was ready to hear it. The suitcase beside the door made everything suddenly feel real. For the last 3 months, Jessica and I had been living in a strange middle ground where neither of us was pretending everything was fine. But neither of us had fully accepted that we might be standing at the end of our relationship either. Now she was standing in front of me with one hand resting on the handle of that suitcase. And I knew whatever she was about to say would either give us something worth rebuilding or finally give us the courage to walk away. I think I owe you the whole truth, she said. I nodded. Okay. She didn't sit down. She remained by the door for several seconds looking at me as if she were trying to find the least painful way to say something that couldn't be made painless. I was embarrassed by how much I needed you, she finally said. Not because you did anything wrong, because I thought needing someone made me weak. I stayed quiet, and then you kept making everything easier for me. You never complained. You never asked for anything back. You just fixed things. She swallowed. At first I thought that was love. Then I started thinking it was just who you were. That's what hurt, I said. She nodded. I know. You didn't just stop appreciating what I did. You started making fun of the qualities that made it possible. Her eyes dropped. I know. You called me unambitious while I was rearranging my entire life around your ambitions. She closed her eyes for a second. I know. You said I liked being needed. I know. And you said you weren't insane enough to marry me. Her face tightened. I remember. That one was probably the worst. She looked at me. I didn't mean it. You meant it enough to say it. She nodded slowly. You're right. There was no defense this time, no argument, no attempt to explain away the sentence. And somehow that made the conversation harder, because I had spent so long preparing myself to fight that I didn't know what to do when she stopped fighting back. Jessica finally sat on the edge of the couch. I wrote down everything I remembered, she said. The notebook. I nodded. I read it again last night. She took a breath. Do you know what I realized? What? I remembered the big things. The car, the money, the work contacts, the rides. But I didn't remember the little things until I started thinking about what my life would have looked like without you. She laughed bitterly. I couldn't remember the last time I'd taken my car in for service myself before you. I didn't say anything. I couldn't remember how many times you'd driven me to the airport. I couldn't remember how often you'd gone grocery shopping when I was busy. I couldn't remember who had called the plumber when my apartment flooded before we moved in together. You don't have to list everything. I do. She opened the notebook because I need to understand what I took for granted. She began reading. January 14, picked me up from work because I missed the train. January 29, paid the credit card bill when my bonus was delayed. February 8, reviewed my presentation until midnight. February 21, drove 3 hours to get me when my car broke down. Her voice cracked. March 4, called your friend at the agency and introduced me. She stopped. Do you remember that one? Yes. That introduction eventually got me the account that led to my promotion. I know. She looked at me. I didn't even thank you properly. You thanked me. I said thanks and then complained about the presentation. I smiled faintly. You did. She turned another page. There are 43 entries. I looked at her. 43 things I could remember. She closed the notebook. And that's not everything. I leaned back. Jessica, I never wanted you to keep a list. Neither did I. She looked down at her hands. That's why this is so humiliating. Why? Because I spent years thinking you were trying to control me by helping me. I frowned. I never did that. I know now. She wiped her eyes. I kept telling myself you liked being needed because it made you feel important. But the truth was uglier. What truth? You weren't trying to feel important. She looked directly at me. You were trying to make my life easier because you loved me. And I took that love and turned it into evidence that you were less capable than me. I didn't answer. She continued. I thought because you didn't brag about your career, you didn't have one. Because you didn't talk about money, you didn't have enough. Because you didn't want to impress people, you lacked ambition. Because you were willing to help me, you must have needed me more than I needed you. She shook her head. I was wrong about all of it. I looked toward the window. Outside, people were walking down the street, carrying groceries, talking on phones, living ordinary lives. The world had continued while ours had slowly come apart. The hardest part, I said, wasn't the money. She looked at me. I know. It wasn't driving you around. It wasn't the favors. I know. It was hearing you make those things sound pathetic. She nodded. Because those things were how I showed love. Her eyes filled with tears, and I made you ashamed of loving me. That sentence hit harder than anything else she'd said. I looked down. Yeah, she moved closer. I'm sorry. I didn't respond immediately. An apology doesn't erase a wound, but for the first time, hers wasn't asking me to make her feel better. It wasn't followed by, but. It wasn't followed by an accusation. It was simply an apology. Thank you, I said. She nodded. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I already forgave you in some ways. She looked surprised. Then why are you still distant? Because forgiveness and access aren't the same thing. She was quiet. Explain. I can forgive you for what happened without giving you the same access to me that you had before. She nodded slowly. That makes sense. You can forgive someone and still decide they don't get to hurt you the same way again. I understand. That's what changed. She looked down. So what does that mean for us? I took a breath. I don't know. Do you love me? Yes. Do you want to be with me? I looked at her for a long time. I want to know whether we can build something different. She nodded. So do I. Then it can't be the old relationship. I know. No more me managing your life. Okay. No more using my money to cover things you can handle. Okay. No more professional favors just because it's convenient. Okay. No more jokes that make one person smaller so the other person can look bigger. Her eyes filled again. Never again. I believed her. But belief wasn't enough. Trust isn't rebuilt because someone says the right sentence. It is rebuilt through hundreds of small moments where the person has an opportunity to repeat the old behavior and chooses not to. Jessica had 3 months before her relocation. We agreed not to make a dramatic decision that night. Instead, we decided to live those 3 months differently. Separate finances, separate responsibilities, no automatic rescuing, no pretending. No using the relationship as an excuse to avoid personal growth. We would see what happened. The first week was awkward. The second was worse. We were both learning how to be partners without being dependent. Jessica paid her own bills. I stopped checking whether she had enough gas. She arranged her own transportation. I stopped asking whether she needed anything from the store unless I was already going. She started handling her work problems without forwarding them to me. I stopped offering solutions unless she asked for my opinion. It felt strange, but something unexpected happened. We started talking more. Real talking. Not logistics, not emergencies, not complaints. One night we sat on the balcony for almost 2 hours discussing why we had both become the people we had become. Jessica told me she had always been terrified of falling behind. Her parents had struggled financially when she was young, and she had developed a fixation on appearing successful because she associated success with safety. I understood more than I expected. I told her I developed a different fear. I'd always been afraid of being useless. Growing up, I watched my father work himself exhausted to keep our family stable. I learned early that being dependable earned trust. So when Jessica needed me, helping her made me feel like I was doing what a good man was supposed to do. Neither of us had intended to create the relationship we ended up with, but intentions don't erase outcomes. We had both contributed to the imbalance. Jessica had learned to lean. I had learned to carry. Eventually, she stopped asking whether she could walk, and I stopped noticing that I was carrying her, until the birthday party forced us to see it. A month later, she received another promotion opportunity at her new company. This time, she handled the entire process herself. She prepared the presentation, she negotiated the salary, she asked mentors for feedback. She didn't ask me to call anyone. When she received the offer, she came home smiling. "I got it. Congratulations. I did it myself." "You did." She looked at me. "I wanted you to know. I'm proud of you." She smiled. "That means more now." "Why?" "Because I know you mean it." I hugged her. It felt different, not like rescuing, not like being needed, just like two people celebrating each other. Then came the difficult part. Her relocation date approached. The company was 3 hours away by plane. She would be moving to another state. We had to decide whether we would try long distance or end the relationship. A year earlier, I would have immediately said we'd make it work. This time I asked myself a harder question. Do we actually want this, or are we afraid to lose what we've invested? We talked for days. There were tears. There were arguments. There were long silences. Eventually, we agreed to try. Not because we couldn't live without each other, but because we wanted to see whether the new version of our relationship could survive distance. Jessica moved. The first few weeks were surprisingly good. We called every night. She told me about her new office. I told her about work. We visited each other. She never asked me to abandon my plans to accommodate hers. I didn't ask her to prove anything. We were finally becoming equal. Then, 6 months later, something happened that I never expected. Jessica came back to town for a weekend and asked me to meet her at the rooftop venue where the birthday party had happened. The place looked completely different in daylight. The lights were gone. The tables were arranged for a corporate luncheon. It was almost impossible to imagine the night that had changed us. She stood beside the railing. "Why here?" I asked. "Because I need to say something here." I waited. "I hated this place for months," she said. Every time I thought about it, I felt ashamed. "You don't have to punish yourself forever." "I'm not." She turned toward me. "I came here because I finally understand what that night gave me." I raised an eyebrow. "Gave you? Perspective?" She smiled sadly. "I thought you being useful meant you were beneath me. Then you stopped being useful, and I realized I had mistaken dependence for superiority." I looked out at the city. "That's one way to put it. You know what the strangest thing is?" "What?" "When you stopped rescuing me, I didn't become weaker." She laughed softly. "I became stronger." "Good. And you did too." I didn't answer. "You became more ambitious, more confident. You started doing things you wanted instead of things you thought you had to do." "Yeah, I think we both needed that." She took a breath. "But there's one more thing." "What?" "I need to apologize for something else." I looked at her. "The party wasn't the only time I humiliated you." I stayed silent. There were dozens of smaller moments, comments in front of friends, jokes about your job, comparing you to other men, acting embarrassed when you wore something I didn't like. I remember them now. She looked at me. And I'm sorry. I nodded. Thank you. Do you ever think about that night? Sometimes. Do you hate me for it? No. Do you wish it never happened? I thought about it. Sometimes. Then I smiled slightly. But if it hadn't happened, I might still be living the same way. She nodded. That's what I was afraid of. Why? Because I realized my worst mistake wasn't embarrassing you. She looked down. It was believing you would always stay. I understood what she meant. She had assumed my love was permanent infrastructure. I had assumed her need for me was proof of love. Both assumptions had been wrong. We stood there quietly. Then she reached into her bag and handed me an envelope. What's this? Open it. Inside was a check. I stared at the amount. It was for the money she'd borrowed over the years. Not every dollar, but a significant portion. I can't take this. It's not charity. Jessica. Please. I shook my head. You don't owe me for loving you. I know. She looked at me. But I owe myself the responsibility of cleaning up what I can. I handed the check back. Then use it for something that matters. Like what? Your new place. Your future. Your savings. She smiled. You really won't let me pay you back. Not because I don't want you to. Because I don't want money to become another way we keep score. She looked at me for a long moment and put the check back into her bag. Okay, we talked for another hour. Eventually, we decided we were going to stay together, but not because Jessica couldn't function without me, and not because I needed to prove I was valuable. We stayed because we had finally learned how to stand beside each other, without one person carrying the other. The relationship didn't become perfect. Real relationships don't. Jessica still occasionally asked for too much. I still occasionally overhelped. The difference was that we noticed. We corrected ourselves. We talked. Months later, she came back for another visit. We went to dinner with Mark and a few friends. At one point, someone made a joke about Jessica being spoiled. She laughed and said, I used to be. Then she looked at me. Not anymore. Mark raised an eyebrow. What happened? Jessica smiled. I learned that the quiet guy everyone thinks is boring might actually be the most capable person in the room. I laughed. Don't encourage him, Mark said. Everyone laughed. But this time, nobody was laughing at me. I didn't need them to defend me. I didn't need Jessica to praise me. I didn't need anyone to validate what I knew about myself. That was the real revenge. Not watching Jessica struggle. Not making her regret the birthday party. Not taking her money. Not humiliating her in return. The most satisfying part was that the woman who once called me too sensitive, too comfortable, too unambitious, and too eager to be needed had eventually looked at me and realized she had completely misunderstood me. She thought my willingness to help meant I was weak. It didn't. It meant I loved her. She thought my quietness meant I lacked confidence. It didn't. It meant I didn't need to dominate every room. She thought my stable career meant I lacked ambition. It didn't. It meant I had different priorities. She thought I needed her more than she needed me. That was the biggest misunderstanding of all. I had wanted her. I had never needed her to survive. And once I understood that, I stopped being afraid of losing her. That freedom changed everything. We stayed together for another 2 years. Eventually, we got engaged. But when we did, it wasn't because I had rescued her enough times to earn a future. It wasn't because she had finally become grateful enough to deserve one. It was because we had both changed. When we planned our wedding, Jessica insisted on handling her side herself. I handled mine. We split expenses. We made decisions together. We disagreed. We compromised. Nobody was anyone's assistant. Nobody was anyone's assistant. Nobody was anyone's safety net. We were two adults choosing each other. On the night before our wedding, Jessica and I sat alone in the hotel room. She looked at me and laughed. Do you remember my birthday party? Unfortunately, I think about it sometimes. So do I. I wish I could go back and stop myself. You can't. I know. She took my hand. But I can tell you something I couldn't tell you then. What? You were never weak. I smiled. I know. She laughed. You really do now. Yeah. She laughed. You really do now. Yeah, she squeezed my hand, and I was never above you. I know. You know what the worst part is? What? I thought you were my safety net. She looked at me. But you were actually my partner. I just didn't know how to be yours. I kissed her forehead. You know now. She smiled. I do. Looking back, people sometimes ask whether I consider what happened revenge. Honestly, I don't know. If revenge means making someone suffer because they hurt you, then no. I didn't want Jessica to suffer. If revenge means taking something from someone, then no. I didn't take anything from her. If revenge means making someone regret underestimating you, then maybe, because she did regret it. But even that isn't the part I'm proudest of. The part I'm proudest of is what happened to me after that night. I stopped measuring my worth by how useful I was. I stopped thinking every problem around me was mine to solve. I stopped apologizing for having boundaries. I stopped canceling my life whenever someone else had a crisis. I learned that being dependable doesn't mean being endlessly available. I learned that generosity without boundaries can become resentment. I learned that love without equality eventually becomes exhaustion. And I learned that sometimes the strongest response to being underestimated isn't proving someone wrong. It's quietly becoming the person they never realized you already were. Jessica once told a room full of people that if I stopped doing everything for her, she didn't know what she would do. She was right about one thing. When I stopped doing everything for her, she had to figure out what she could do for herself, and she did. She became stronger. I became stronger. Our relationship became stronger because neither of us was pretending that love meant carrying another adult through life. The birthday party that was supposed to celebrate Jessica ended up exposing something neither of us wanted to see. She thought she was humiliating the man who needed her. Instead, she accidentally introduced me to the man who didn't need permission to walk away. I didn't walk away that night because I wasn't ready, but I stopped walking behind her. I stopped carrying her. I stopped fixing everything. And eventually, I learned to walk beside her. That's the difference between being someone's safety net and being someone's partner. A safety net exists beneath you because you expect to fall. A partner stands beside you because both of you intend to stay on your feet. And if I learned anything from that birthday party, it was this. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't making someone feel the pain they caused you. Sometimes it's becoming so whole on your own that the person who once took your presence for granted finally understands exactly what they had and realizes you were never the weak one for loving them. You were strong enough to leave the moment you understood that love without respect wasn't love you had to keep proving.